Hi everyone. Thanks for joining me in this webinar on how to use happy numbers to help you teach math remotely. My name is Donna Potasic and I'm the K-8 math facilitator for the Geneva School District in Geneva, Illinois, which is a far west suburb of Chicago. I want to start by acknowledging the fact that we have all been thrust into a situation that in our wildest dreams we could have never anticipated. For over 2 weeks now, I have been trying to remotely teach our teachers how to teach math remotely to their students. And I can say honestly, these have probably been the most stressful 2 weeks in my entire career. But having said that, I also know that what I'm experiencing is nothing like you, the regular classroom teacher, is experiencing. Everyone is bringing their own challenges to this moment. I know some of you are using technology that you've never used before with very little support. Some of you are trying to teach your students and at the same time homeschool your own children. And I know that some of you are worried about your own relatives, your mothers and fathers and grandparents. And I also know that some of you are probably experiencing your own medical issues and trying to work through that while teaching at the same time. So I just want to let you know up front that my heart is with you. I know how difficult this is. And I also want to let you know that, you know what, I'm not a Happy Numbers employee. I'm not a salesperson. I agree to be part of this webinar because I do know firsthand how Happy Numbers can help lighten your load and really help you reach your students. So here's a little bit of background about myself. I've been teaching for 30 years. I'm an NCTM member. I have a master's in mathematics education, and I do provide a lot of professional development. And Geneva is a longtime user of Happy Numbers. About 7 years ago, I was looking for a digital platform that could help our teachers make that shift to the Common Core standards. I looked at lots of programs out there, and quite honestly, I wasn't very impressed. Everything seemed to be more like an electronic worksheet. And even though maybe doing math online sounds exciting to us, our students do a lot of stuff online. So just having an electronic worksheet is not engaging to them at all. Well, just by chance, I ran across Happy Numbers on Twitter. It was in beta format at the time. And when I clicked on it, the first thing, it just struck me as being something new and fresh and different. So I brought it to our classroom teachers. We played around with it for a few months while it was in beta format. And what the teachers noticed right away was it had a very clean interface to it. And while some of the programs out there seem to have like this much game to it and maybe this much math, Happy Numbers had that right balance of gamification and a quality level of instruction. Geneva became one of the first districts to adopt Happy Numbers district-wide. Since then, we've developed a very good relationship with the company. Sometimes even some of the developers come out to Geneva and test out some of the new aspects that they'd like to bring to the program. So here's my plan for the webinar. We're going to spend about 40 minutes looking at both the viewpoint of Happy Numbers from the teacher's viewpoint and the students. At the end, I'm going to give you 5 important tips on how to start using Happy Numbers to teach math remotely, and you'll also see a PDF of this presentation. So the first thing we need to do is get you started with setting up your class account. What you'll need to do is go to happynumbers.com, and you can either click on Sign Up Now or I'm a Teacher. You will be asked to put in your email. So I already have a school account. So I'm going to use an alternative email address here and put in your name and create a password and then click on account. You can also notice down here that you can sign up through Clever. So Clever is a learning management system that many districts use. And so signing up through Clever through your district will automatically create that account and roster your students. In Geneva, we have our teachers just sign up through their own email address and set up their own classrooms. Okay, so we have Welcome to Happy Numbers. Now we're going to add our class. So by clicking on that, I can choose the grade. So just for demonstration purposes, I'll choose grade 2. And then I want to give my class a special name. So let's say Math All-Stars. And then I'll click next. And here's where I can add student names. So I'll make up a couple of names here. For each student, I can create a password. I know a lot of our teachers use kid code numbers or student numbers in their regular classroom, and so they use those numbers for their student passwords, just so the students don't forget passwords and makes it easy for them to log in. And so I'll just make up a password here, add that student, and then I can continue rostering my students. Add student. Once I have all of my students entered, I can click done, and now it's creating my classroom. Happy Numbers will automatically assign a class code to your classroom, and this is what your students will need when they first log on. The program will also produce login cards that the students can use that will have their class code and password written on it. So if I click on that link, I can open it and see what that looks like. So now we have a getting started guide, entering class codes, testing the audio. If we look down below, we can see those passwords that you can send to your students, so they have the class code and their password for logging in. So you can see getting your classroom set up and started is very easy. There's just a few steps involved. As I mentioned at the start, I know that we're all in some extremely difficult times and that we're facing some very similar challenges. When you're teaching math remotely, it's very hard to continue to assess each student's individual level of instruction. It's hard to individualize their learning. Many of you might use guided math or math stations to do that on a regular basis, and that's very difficult to do remotely. It's hard to explain concepts to a student. If you have a struggling student or a student who has questions, it's hard to give them that individual attention when you're not face to face. And it's also hard to manage and monitor student progress when students are logging on or completing work when they're not right in front of you. So Happy Numbers can help with all of these aspects. Once you've given the students their class code and their passwords, they will log on, and the first thing they'll do is they'll take a placement test. The placement test consists of 20 adaptive questions that will define that student's level and then set an individual learning path. The questions will be read aloud to the students once they log in, and the students will not get immediate feedback on their questions. So they just work their way through until they finish that placement test. As the teacher, you will see the results of each of the students' placement tests in your teacher dashboard, which we'll look at in a second here. So after passing that placement test, when the student logs on, they will be put on an individual learning path depending on where that placement test leveled them. The students will not know their levels. The nice part about that is that removes any possibility of students comparing levels or maybe bragging about levels. When the students log on, their learning platform looks very similar. There's no comparison being done across the classroom. And you'll also notice that the students, they're excited to move through the learning paths. They get to discover dinosaurs and hatch eggs. And so there's that built-in kind of gamification brought to the program that keeps them engaged. On this side of the screen, you'll notice that this is laying out that learning path for grade 1. It mentions modules and topics. Those of you who teach Eureka Math or Engage New York, you'll find that terminology very familiar. In Geneva, we started teaching Eureka Math 7 years ago as well. And we've since then adapted both Eureka and Engage New York to meet our own needs, but we still follow this same module and topic sequence. The modules and the topics in Happy Numbers are directly aligned to the Eureka Math or Engage New York Math modules and topics as well. So many people find that very helpful because they know that Happy Numbers is presenting the material in the same sequence. If you're not using Eureka Math or Engage New York, don't worry about it because the modules are laid out very explicitly, telling you what concepts are being taught and what individual lessons are being presented to the students. So it's easy to follow their sequence of lessons. So let's take a look at what a student sees when they are in that placement test. So when a student logs into Happy Numbers, they will now click on the link that says I'm a student. And they will enter the class number that you've given them. This is a made-up class here. And they will see a screen then with all of the students in your classroom. You notice that each student has a cute little icon next to their names. This helps our non-readers find their names quickly so they can just look for that little icon. And I'm going to go to a student that has already started the placement test so you can see what that looks like. They'll type in the password that you've given them. And this is the screen they'll see when they're starting that placement test. So it just kind of gets them ready, gives them a tip that, okay, we're going to stay focused and ready to answer some questions. So as you can see, this student has already been working through the placement test. The little boxes along the top represent each question. The question is read aloud for the student as soon as they move from one question to the next. The students can also toggle between English and Spanish. And I've been told by our bilingual teachers that the language, the grammar for the Spanish translation is very natural and does not sound robotic or stilted for our students. So we're going to finish out this placement test and see where it takes us next. So we have this one question to answer. Fran asked her friends to vote for their favorite activity. How many friends voted for games? And we'll pull in 5 friends and click done. Okay, so now we're finished with the placement test and we are ready to start learning. Okay, our spaceship is ready. Again, the program is very intuitive. It's not the type of program that over explains what to do on the screen. Our children follow along very naturally, looking for arrows, looking for movement. It's not difficult for them to manage the platform. So now we're in this platform and you can see some very interesting things happening. We've got some planets, we have some eggs. Okay, and I'm going to choose play. And it tells me I get to choose a planet. So I've got some different planets around me and I'm going to choose this one, nice and colorful. You can see some eggs around it. And this is going to start my learning path. So as you can see, there's nothing on the screen that is describing what level the student is at. It's just putting them along a path. Other things to notice on this screen is up in this corner here, you see 3 circles. Those circles are a way for a student to monitor their own time on task. The recommended amount of time for Happy Numbers is 45 minutes a week. And so those circles each would represent 15 minutes. As the students work through the program, the circles fill in green so the students can see how far they are in meeting that 45-minute goal. So again, it's obvious for the student to click on the play button and it's going to take me to my first lesson. How I was able to figure that out without any further instruction. Again, it's very intuitive what to do here. So the rod has blank cubes. There are my number choices along the bottom of the screen. So I can just choose those and click OK. And then keep going through. and how many cubes in total. So you can see that similar to our hide 0 cards, that shows those groups of 10. Now you will have noticed then that as I got that question correct, it moved one of the balls across the top of the screen here. So that's another way for students to monitor their progress through a lesson. As we get the problems correct, it does move them across. If we make a mistake, it will move one back and offer supports on how to complete our way through that activity. So that was just a quick look at what students would see when they first log into the program. The platform itself guides the students through their mistakes toward mastery. I've seen some programs where if a student is struggling and getting questions wrong, it kicks them back several levels, and they are now required to solve more problems to get to the next level, and that can be very frustrating for students. And I've also seen programs where a student could click on a hint button, and when they click on hint, a paragraph pops up explaining how to do the problem. And I don't know about you, but I find it hard to believe that a struggling student is going to be able to read through a paragraph on how to solve a math problem and understand it well enough to move forward. So I never found those types of programs very helpful, very engaging, and they often feel punitive to the students. So the students will be given a series of similar problems until they demonstrate mastery. The lessons are sequenced according to the concrete representational abstract model of math mastery. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with that model. It's the idea that we want to introduce a concept to the students using manipulatives, concrete materials, gradually take those away and introduce pictures, and then eventually introduce just numbers on their own, or that abstract version of the concept. So that's the same sequence that Happy Numbers uses. They give the students items to drag and drop about the screen, slowly just move them toward a pictorial representation, and then to those numbers. The beautiful part about the program is once they reach that more abstract algorithm, if they're struggling, Happy Numbers recognizes that. And so they'll pull back in some of those pictures or those manipulatives to help walk the students through the problem. It's like they have their own teaching assistant with them. They're using the same manipulatives that you would use if you were working face-to-face with a student and trying to help them with that conceptual understanding. You'll be very familiar with the manipulatives that are found in the program. You'll see 10 frames, place value disks and charts, area models for fractions, a lot of those manipulatives that our students are very familiar with using already. Now let's take a look at what the teacher dashboard looks like. On that dashboard, you're going to see that you get personal reports and whole class reports. They show accuracy and time on task. They'll also show a grade readiness projection. That means that according to that placement test, Happy Numbers will predict how long it will take a student to reach the next grade level material, assuming that they're working in the program for that recommended 45 minutes a week. And just so you know, you will be able to adjust the level of instruction for individual students, either higher or lower if needed. So here's an example of a demo class, the teacher dashboard. You can see I have different report tabs going along the top here. And I also see a class summary and a class activity summary. I'm going to come back to those because I want to show you down below how you'll see each of your students, and we'll look at the information that's given for them. According to the placement test, the students will be divided into their instructional level. This demo class was a second grade class, and you can see that some of the students were placed into a first grade instructional path, some into second grade, and we have one in third grade down here as well. Next to the students, you'll see these circles, and the circles represent the amount of time that each student spent in Happy Numbers over each of the last 4 weeks. Students that have a green circle show that they did complete that 45-minute goal that week. You can see some of them have completed parts of that 45-minute goal. Some of them were not able to work in happy numbers at all that week for various reasons. And you can see a lot of them have that green, showing that they did complete those activities. You can also see this grade readiness. So again, these students are in grade 2 material. The grade readiness projection shows how long we feel it would take them to work in happy numbers before they're ready for that next grade level. The placement test scores are shown under the math growth column. The placement test score is a quantile measure. For those of you who are familiar with Lexile scores, the quantile score is basically just the math version of that. Happy Numbers has partnered with Metametrics to create the placement test and to then determine those quantile scores. If you're interested in quantile scores and more information about them, you can easily Google quantile measures and you'll see lots of information about quantile scores. But like I said, they're basically just the math version of Lexile scores. Any score that has a yellow dot next to it shows that that student scored below that expected grade level. The green scores show that they're on or above grade level. To the right of that, you'll see some plus and minus scores. If you were to use happy numbers across a whole year, the students would also have an opportunity to take a mid-year assessment as well as an end-of-year assessment. And that student growth would be shown in that column. If I go to my next tab here, we have the progress report. This is showing each of the modules that a student has completed. You can tell they're completed by the green squares underneath each module and topic. If we go down here to grade 2, you'll notice that some of those have been grayed out. That means that when these students took the placement test, it jumped them to module 4 for grade 2. So anything that's been grayed out just shows you that the placement test brought them into the middle of a grade level rather than the beginning of a grade level. If we look at the activity stream tab, it's going to show you a summary of your whole class. You can set that up by daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. So in this case, it's showing the week of March 23rd through March 29th. You can see the number of exercises completed by students, the time that they spent, and the accuracy report. You can also dig deeper into this screen by clicking on Show Details. And within that, you will be able to see each student individually if you wanted to see how particular students did across that same week. You can find that in that activity stream. So if I go back to my main dashboard, those are those main features in the Reports tab. And now I can go to my control panel. In the control panel, you will now see the activity of the students over the last 8 weeks. And in this control panel, you could also change the amount of time you'd like students to work in happy numbers across a week. You can change it either higher or lower. Sometimes for our struggling students, we set their weekly goal to 60 minutes instead of 45 minutes because we do see the value of the program and we want them working in the program more often than just 45 minutes. So sometimes we set that goal to 60 minutes just to give them that added exposure in the program. If I click on assessments, you again see the score for that placement test. And as I mentioned, if you're working in happy numbers across a whole year, they'll have that opportunity to take the mid-year test and the end of the year test, and you'll see the growth that is made through that. At any time, if you're interested in changing the learning path of a student, we could click, let's see, we'll click on Brody here. and we can go to Brody's assignments. Okay, so here it's just showing me Brody's activity stream. I can click on assignments, and I can now change his pathway. So right now, Brody is in grade 1, and let's say I want to move him ahead into just starting with the grade 2 materials. I'll click on all topics. When I click there, that gives me the entire curriculum for Happy Numbers. So I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to take him out of the first grade modules, and then leave everything else checked beyond that. Now, when I change his assignment, he does not know this. When he logs in, he's going to see the exact same thing. He's going to see that learning path, and he's not going to feel the difference. He won't know if I've moved him ahead, and he won't know if I moved him behind. It always just takes them to the next topic in their pathway. So you will know that his assignment has been changed, but he will not know that. If I go back to my report page, okay, now I can look at the curriculum. This is a nice feature because I can look at the types of activities that are found at every grade level by just clicking on a grade level tab and choosing the different modules and activities found in those modules. So I'm going to show you a few of those activities just so you get a better feel for how the program runs and how the program introduces concepts to students. So let's start with the kindergarten topic. So I'm going to go to kindergarten. Let's see. We're well into the school year, so let's go down to Module 5, and we'll look at count 10 ones and some ones. So this pulls up an activity for our students. And again, we have an option here to have the question read aloud to us and to toggle back and forth between English and Spanish. And very simple directions. It's asking me to fill the box. So I'm going to fill the box. You'll see that there's lots of different representations for our students. In this particular topic, we're working on that idea of introducing teen numbers and the fact that in our teens, the 1 represents one group of 10. So we really give the students a visual representation of what that 1 means. That it's not just an abstract group of 10, it's actually a group of 10 things. Okay, so this box has 10 candies, and I click OK. And then it also has 4 candies on the screen. So just so you know, it doesn't matter what kind of device the students are using. If they have a touch screen, it works very well with that. If they have a tablet computer, if they're working at a desktop computer with a mouse, all of the different devices work the same. So it's very easy for students to manipulate. So now we're going to take this and again show that we have this unit. Okay, so here I have 1 box with the 10 candies in it, and then I have 4 more. Okay. And now you'll see that it's going to work on the same concept, only it's going to give us a different representation of that concept. And that's the nice part about Happy Numbers. It doesn't rely on just one method of instruction. It shows the concept through many different representations to make sure that we're reaching all of our students. Because as you know, sometimes one way makes sense for some students, and others we have to show them a multiple of ways of solving a problem before they understand it. So Happy Numbers approaches problems from all of those different aspects. So here we'll move the cubes. I like on this one how it separates the cubes into groups of 5, just like a 10 frame would. And it kind of helps the students subitize those numbers of cubes as well. So now it's creating that 10 rod, okay? So if you're using base 10 blocks with your students, that helps make that transition to using those pieces to show the groups of 10. So a rod has 10 cubes, and then I have 3 more cubes. And so that means I have 1 rod or 1 group of 10, and then 3 more cubes. And then you can see how it's slowly starting to move me along that path. Instead of building that rod of 10, it's already showing me the rod of 10 and asked me to clarify that, okay, now I know that a rod has 10 cubes because I experienced that in that first screen, moving those cubes into that rod to make the 10. So you can see how it gradually releases that information for students. So that's an example of a kindergarten activity. So now let's go to grade 2. Column addition, okay, this is a tough concept for our students. So we're going to look at that from how happy numbers represents it. Okay, so we're adding 2-digit numbers. And you can see this is what the students are seeing. So to begin with in this problem, Happy Numbers is creating the first addend for them. So you can see that 37 is being shown as 3 groups of 10 and 7 ones. And now I'm going to demonstrate the 25. So the student would build 25 in the same way. We'll pull out 2 10s and 5 ones. And then I can click done. So it's showing me how I can arrange my ones discs to make those, to make a group of 10 and then 2 ones. So I can easily count those without having to count the individual discs. So I'm going to add my ones. You can see that 7 and 5 make 12. And it's going to show me how I can now take the 10 ones and trade them in for 1 10. So I'm just going to take that and slide it over, and it automatically made that group of 10 for me. Now I'm going to add my 10s. So I started with 3 10s and 2 10s, and then I composed those ones to make another 10. So altogether I have 6 10s and my 2 ones. And so now I'm going to type in my total. So if I have 6 10s and 2 ones, I have a total of 62. So it's just a nice way of combining that place value chart and the abstract number form of adding these 2-digit numbers, because it really drives in the point of what is happening when we're adding these numbers. Okay, we're not carrying 1 as maybe we taught it in the past, but we're actually taking a group of 10 and trading it in for 1 10 and moving that over in the place value chart. So when students do get introduced to that standard algorithm for adding 2-digit numbers, they know what's happening on the page. They know what those marks on the page mean. They're not just following rote steps with no meaning behind them. Okay, so let's take a look then at a 3rd grade example. How we're introducing multiplication. So that's one of those early concepts that we look at in 3rd grade. So it's going to start with that additive meaning of multiplication. So we want to look at what it means to add equal groups of objects. So you can see we have pictures that represent the equal groups, and then we have the numbers below them. And so students are asked to find the total. The nice part about this is if they're not ready for that multiplicative thinking, they have the pictures right there on the page so they can find the total. So we have 3 groups of 2, so that would give us a 6. And now we're seeing a different group of objects, and this time I have 4 groups of 3. So let's make a mistake on this one and see what happens. Let's say I miscount and I put 11. Okay, so it recognizes that I got the problem wrong, and so it's going to help me work through the problem. Okay. So again, this is what would happen if a student were sitting right in front of you and you saw them write down an incorrect answer. You would go back to the beginning and help them through the problem step by step. So Happy Numbers becomes that assistant for you and that guided teacher for the students. So in one group, I have 3 bananas. And now I'm combining another group of 3 to give me 6 bananas. And then we're going to add 3 more for 9 bananas. And then now I can see that my total should be 12 bananas. So it gives me that opportunity to correct my answer. Okay, much nicer than just being given a hint through a paragraph. You'll also notice because I got that problem wrong, it did not move one of the pieces of fruit over. Again, Happy Numbers builds on mastery, and it recognizes when a student is struggling. So it knows that it needs to give me a couple more similar questions before it moves me into the next concept. So it doesn't steamroll students through a concept. It keeps bringing them back to that mastery feeling before they're ready to move on. Okay, let's look at now a 4th grade example. Look at multiplication and division. We go to topic C, and let's look at how they represent partial products using that pictorial representation here. Okay, so it says let's record the problem vertically. The students, as they work their way through Happy Numbers, again, it's very intuitive what to do when they see kind of these shaded numbers. They know it means that we're going to drag those numbers to another part of the screen. Okay. And now it's going to bring in that place value chart to help work me through this multiplication. It's going to have me record my answers off to the side. So it's helping to bridge that gap between that pictorial representation and that algorithm of partial products. Okay, so how many ones were multiplied? So we multiplied 3 ones, and you can see from our picture that that gave us 6 ones. And now it's asking me how many 10s were multiplied. Well, I had 2 10s and I multiplied, it's asking the value of the 10s that were multiplied, very important step there. So I took 2 times the groups of 20, and that gave me a total of 40. And now I can write the final product on the line. So 2 times 23 gave me 6 ones and 4 10s, or 40, for a final product of 46. And then I can find that, or type that final answer. 2 times 3 is 46. So again, you can see how we've used that standard algorithm off to the side in combination with the place value chart. Eventually, working through the program, it will lead them to just that standard algorithm, just like you would do if you were teaching. You start with those concrete materials and pictures before you finally release the students to solve the problems with that standard algorithm. Now, let's take a look at the program through the eyes of a student who's already been working in the program. So I'm in my demo class again, and I'm going to go in as Erica this time. So enter Erica's password. And you can see that she is well on her way in this particular learning path. She has already solved 2 of the lessons in this path, and you can see the pulsing arrow here. Again, it's always very intuitive on what to do when the students get to this part of their screen. She's working on hatching a dinosaur egg down here. Up in the corner, you can see the 3 circles. The first circle has been partially filled in, so that's showing us that she has already working toward that 45-minute goal for the week. And you'll see that she has 7 points. So the point system is tied into the amount of time that the students are actively working in Happy Numbers. It's based on the average amount of time that Happy Numbers expects it to take students when they're solving the activities. If they happen to solve them faster than that average time, they actually do get some bonus points there. So we can see that Erica has 7 points and she is working toward that goal. So we're going to click on the play button and that'll take us to the last part. That this will take us to where she left off the last time she was in the program. We click start and the question says how many apples in the box. So we have a box that looks very much like a 10 frame. So we will say that there are 10 apples in the box. And click done. And now it's going to use that picture to help us with our subtraction. So we've already established that, that this box has 10 apples in it, and we are going to show the subtraction by tapping on apples to show that we're eating them, which is, I think, a natural way to look at subtraction. So I can click on the 4 apples here. And now I know I need to work my way into the box to click on 2 more apples. So I have eaten 6 of the apples. And now I can enter the amount of apples left. Because it is set up in a 10 frame, I can easily see that there are 8 apples left. And the answer to 14 minus 6 is 8. And now we'll continue with that. So this time it already put that box of 10 apples in, so I can see that I have 10 and 2 more. So again, it slowly moves the students along that learning path. We've already established the 10 in the 10 frame, so I can see that I have 12. And now I'm going to subtract 7 of them by tapping on 7. And again, it'll open up the box so I can subtract my 7. You can see that I have 5 apples left. And that tells me that 12 minus 7 is 5. And as I'm continuing, you can see the balls moving across the screen. So this time we need to subtract 8. So I'll click on the 5 to show that I've eaten 5 so far. The box opens up so I can eat 3 more. And I have 7 left. And 15 minus 8 is 7. So I've finished that activity, and so now it's going to take me back to my screen. So you can see I'm working on cracking open that egg. So I'm getting a little bit more information about that egg. Kind of builds my excitement because I want to see what's in that egg. And you'll also notice how the green circle has changed as well to show my progress, to show that amount of time that I was just working in that activity. And I moved along my path to the next step. So I'll click play, and now it's going to show me subtraction again, but now I'm using a different representation. Just like I mentioned earlier, it pulls in lots of different manipulatives, the same type that you would use in your classroom, just to further the students' knowledge and understanding of the concept. Okay, so this time we're going to pop the cubes to match the equation. So I can see that I have a 10 rod and a 1 to represent my 11, and I need to take 4 away. So I'm going to click on the cubes, and you can see my 10 rod now separated, so I can continue clicking on cubes there. If by any chance I make a mistake, I can always use this cube to replace a cube that maybe I popped by mistake. So I need to pop 3 more here. Okay, so I had my 11, I took 4 of them away, and now I can see that I have 7 cubes left. And it's going to continue taking me through my subtraction problems using the 10 rod and the base 10 cubes rather than the pictures. So you can again see how that concept progresses as the students work through their activities. So you can see how the program looks from the student point of view. They just go to that learning path, click on the arrow, they're seeing the different dinosaurs that they're hatching, they're choosing planets. Again, very engaging for all of the students. One last thing to show you in your teacher dashboard is your roster. Okay, this is just a list of your students and their passwords. Again, you can edit those. You can also print your passwords from this screen, and if you need to add another student, you can do that down below. If you need to take away students, you can do that in this screen as well. So I believe we've covered all of the sections in your teacher dashboard. So you see lots of information there, progress monitoring your students, digging deep into the activity levels of different students, and this is where you have that control of assigning different tasks and looking at the curriculum from a student's point of view as well. Okay, so after all that, let's think about happy numbers for your benefit. Okay, so Happy Numbers right now is being offered free for the rest of this school year. Happy Numbers is compliant with all of the child protection policies that are in place, so you don't have to worry about the types of data that's being collected about students, just that important security for our students whenever they're working online. As I mentioned, Happy Numbers works very well on all kinds of devices. In our school district, our kindergarten and first grade students have iPads, so it works very well with that touch screen. It works well on phones, on tablet computers, on Chromebooks. We also have some of our schools have the computer labs still with desktop computers, and the students control the program through a mouse. All of it works very well, and the students don't have any trouble working their way through the program. And as you can see, it really is easy for teachers and students to learn and to jump right in with. Okay, so here's some tips for you on how to get the most out of Happy Numbers while teaching remotely. First of all, I would go in and try some of the activities just like I showed you. Just jump in, click on some of the activities within your curriculum, just so you get a better feel for how the program introduces the concepts and works its way through different concepts. That way, if your students do have questions, you can better help them think their way through the problems. For the best results, we would encourage your students to use Happy Numbers 3 or 4 times a week at 15 to 20 minutes each time. Through our remote teaching, we are experiencing some change in how much our students are able to spend working in math. And so our teachers are greatly relying on students using Happy Numbers because they have such faith in the program. And they know that if a student cannot log on personally with a teacher at a prescribed hour of the day, that the students can go into Happy Numbers whenever it's convenient for them or convenient for their parents, put in that 15 to 20 minutes of work time and really be provided with that quality instruction. It's as if another teacher were sitting there with them, introducing the new concepts, helping them when they're struggling with a concept. It's just like having a teaching assistant right there with them. So encourage them and encourage their parents to get them into the program 3 or 4 times a week. You'll definitely see a benefit from that. Also, as we're working through this, I've just been telling my teachers, okay, keep that growth mindset in mind. We all have those posters all over our classroom encouraging that growth mindset. I can do this. We value our mistakes. We believe in grit and not letting mistakes discourage us. We know that mistakes that's just something that's part of the learning process. So it's important for we as teachers to keep that in mind as we're learning how to teach in a completely different manner, and then encourage the students to think about that growth mindset because they're experiencing school in a completely different way, and so we're all in this together. And I would, again, reiterate to parents how Happy Numbers is just like having a teacher there. So it's not just a game. It's not just review work. It does introduce new concepts to students. So just encourage the parents to put the students into that program for that suggested time each week. And I think it would be nice if you just encourage your kids to share their experiences as they move along their learning path. They'll encounter new dinosaurs and hatch eggs, and it's important for them to share that excitement, okay? I know these are scary times for students, so focusing on that engagement and learning that they're doing through Happy Numbers, I think will build excitement around your math program and kind of take our minds off of everything else that's going on. Okay, so what do you need to do right now? You need to start by using the platform, getting yourself signed up, getting your class rostered. And just a reminder, it's absolutely free until the end of this school year. After you've completed setting up your class, you need to direct your students to go to happynumbers.com. Make sure that the students have their class code and their password so they can log in. And you need to somehow include Happy Numbers in your daily math plan. I know our teachers are being required to provide some sort of contact to parents and students on a daily basis, laying out their plan of instruction for the day. That might be done through amount of time spent in each topic, or maybe more of a schedule that you set up for the students. Either way, you know, including Happy Numbers as part of your daily math plan will not only make it easier for you, but it'll make it easier for the students and the parents, because it's going to give them a very familiar platform to work in, not something that they have to learn new and learn all over again every day they go into it. And it will be important for you to monitor your students' weekly performance through your teacher dashboard. At some point in time, we can come back around and answer questions, just like any program. When we started, we don't know what questions we have yet. So as you're monitoring your students' progress, and you have questions maybe about what the reports mean or how you can dig deeper into the reports, we'll come back around and help answer those questions. If at any time you're experiencing any sort of trouble with Happy Numbers, you are welcome to email them directly at support@happynumbers.com. I can tell you very honestly that they're very responsive to teachers. They answer your questions very quickly, and really do want to make sure that you're having a successful experience in the program. I've also included my work email account down below if you have general questions about Happy Numbers, or if you just have questions about teaching math remotely and maybe want to hear about some of the things we're trying to do in Geneva to help reach our students, or you just want to talk about this whole experience. I am here and I am happy to help you in any way that I can. Like I said, I know we're all in this together, and I just want to be there for teachers to help them. I also included my Twitter handle there if you would like to follow me on Twitter. I'm always looking for new ideas for teaching math, and like I said at the start, this is how I found Happy Numbers, was through my Twitter account. So I found that that's one of the most valuable professional development platforms for me. So thank you again for joining us, and I wish you the best of luck as we continue teaching math in a way that we never thought we'd have to teach it before.